So you want to set up an art shop, but you're not sure how? Well, here's an easy step-by-step guide to get you started. If you're new here, my name's Lee, and I started my brand Stickli in June of 2024 selling stickers, clay charms, and button pins. I know how difficult it can be to get everything set up and running, but I promise it's a lot easier than you might think. Step 1. What are you gonna sell? Now, this can change. This can be multiple things. When I first started, I was literally just selling stickers, and I only recently branched out. But I think in the beginning, the most important thing is finding something that's not too risky and that doesn't break the bank. Something I recommend is having consistent income, or at least enough saved up to get started, because it can actually get more expensive than you might think. Some examples of maybe less risky items are stickers, like I mentioned, prints, postcards, or just digital products. That's not to say that you can't do something maybe more risky or more expensive up front. But if you're really starting out, just go with something that's not gonna cost too much. Then once you've figured out what you're gonna sell, make a backlog of them or make them kind of in bulk so that you can take product photos and also to show that you have inventory. I think it's a really good idea to have multiple types of a product so that if people are to buy, they have some variety and you can get more sales that way. I recommend having maybe 5 to 10 products just when you're starting out. And then you want to also figure out what you're going to price your products. Now, this can definitely depend on what you're selling, but if it's handmade or if it's something that you're producing yourself or a physical object, one thing you can do is figure out how much it costs to make the product and then multiply that by 3 to get a good product price. But obviously you don't have to follow that at all. If you're absolutely new to it and you don't know exactly where to start, that might be something that works out for you. Depending on what you're selling as well, you're going to want to figure out the materials that you're going to need, how much that's going to cost, and also if you're going to outsource versus make them yourself. For example, stickers you can either make in your own bedroom like me, or have a third-party company print them for you. This is totally up to personal preference, but for some products it might actually be required to outsource them. For example, something like enamel pins. You'll want to think about if it's more expensive to make the product in your own home or get it produced by a third-party company. Step 2. Branding. This is the fun part. I love branding so much because it adds so much character to your business. If you have good branding, somebody will see something related to your business and know immediately that it belongs to you. Branding is very important. I'm really passionate about this one because as an artist, it's really fun to just kind of put your own twist on everything. I recommend finding a logo, name, and brand theme that aligns with your brand's values and what you do. For example, my logo is a black cat with a star for one of her eyes and a closed one for the other. And those two things symbolize both creativity and imagination and the comfort and calm and kind of bridging the gap between those two things. And so basically everything I create is for that mission statement. I recommend finding 2 to 3 core values and then kind of solidifying your brand theme. I also want to add that mascots are a great branding technique. I totally recommend making a mascot, especially if you're an artist. It's super fun and you can create the lore for it. It's going to be something that people are easily going to be able to remember you by. I use my mascot in all of my profile pictures with any account related to my business. This also brings up the topic of shape language. Throughout my business, I use very soft and round shape language to convey approachableness, softness, cuteness. This type of shape language aligns with my overall brand message. It's very childlike, warm, welcoming, that kind of vibe. I also kind of extend this to other things. Like on my website, I use very soft, round fonts. I pretty much try and use that anywhere I can because it's a good way to keep your brand cohesive and memorable. I recommend looking into this kind of shape language thing because it can really change the way that others view your business and help you construct a personality that others are drawn to. You can also consider things like a brand color, music, and also something really important is feelings. What do you want your customers to feel when they see anything anything related to your brand. Don't forget to have fun with branding. It's a way of storytelling and actually is a great way to attract the right people to your business. Step 3, your website. So this is where you're going to figure out where you're going to host your shop. From what I've noticed, the two biggest platforms to host art shops is either Etsy or Shopify. Personally, I use Shopify for a plethora of reasons, but I will break down the pros and cons for you guys. Etsy has its pros because there's built-in SEO. It's a marketplace, so if someone types something in, there's always a chance for you to be found. But then on Shopify, the downside of that, it's like you're on an island. No one's gonna find you unless you market. So you have to do all of that by yourself. One of the cons of Etsy though is that there's only so much branding you can actually do with it. Like if someone buys from your shop and tells someone else that they bought something from you, chances are they're gonna say, oh yeah, I got this thing from Etsy, not from your shop. And I think that's the chokehold that Etsy has on so many small businesses. That's why I personally like Shopify, because everything is actually mine, you know? On top of that, I pretty much designed my entire website myself the way I wanted it, but there's kind of limited capability with Etsy. So that's something to keep in mind too. Now, both platforms have their fees, of course. As I'm sure a lot of you already know, Etsy has a 20-cent fee for every single listing that you create, plus a 6.5% fee on every sale that you make. And then for processing the orders, there's a 3% fee plus 25 cents. So they definitely add up, especially if you're doing this long term. On the other hand, Shopify, most people that I've noticed pretty much stick with the basic plan. That's what I have. So it's $39 a month, which isn't too bad as long as you have consistent income. Keep in mind though, for Shopify, the plan you have is going to determine how much they take per sale. So for the basic plan, it is 2.9% plus 30 cents per sale. Now, this is obviously going to be a decision that you have to make yourself, but I personally did not see Etsy working out for me long term, especially with what's going on with that platform lately. So, but do keep in mind that there are other options out there like Big Cartel or WooCommerce, etc. I just recommend doing your own research to figure out which one is best for you. Once you figured out where you're going to host your shop, you're going to want to figure out your shop policies. So this includes things like, are you going to accept returns? How long will it take you to ship an order out? How long will the order roughly take to get to the person depending on where they live? What to do if a package has broken in the mail? Stuff like that. It took me a minute to figure out all of that stuff, but I guarantee you, the sooner you do it, the better. If you're not going to use a marketplace like Etsy, by the way, and you're going to do something like Shopify or host it on your own website, do keep in mind how much your domain is going to cost, what domain you want to have, and also your email account. I know some people go with Gmail accounts for their professional email for their business, but I personally have my own domain email. So it's literally just lee@stickli.co. That's totally up to you. I've seen people who are really successful who literally have Gmail account emails. I don't really think it matters that much, but for the branding aspect of it, it might be something to keep in mind. Step 4, shipping. So this part was really scary for me at first because I was like, how does this work? What is happening? It's a lot easier than you think. First, you're gonna figure out where you're gonna be shipping to. I personally ship to the United States, where I'm from, Canada, and the UK for right now. I would ship to the rest of the European Union, but because of the new GPSR regulations, that's kind of hard. I recommend looking more into that, by the way. If you are going to ship internationally, do keep in mind that there are some rules and regulations you have to follow depending on which country that you're shipping into. You'll need something to make your commercial invoices, which if you're using Shopify, there is an app for this, I believe. I think it's called Customs Buddy. And then you'll also want to decide if you need to collect duties or taxes from the country that you're shipping into. Another thing you'll want to keep in mind is tracking. I personally only send tracked mail, but if you want to do untracked, that's perfectly fine, especially for something like stickers, because it can be really, really cheap to ship them both domestically and internationally with just a forever stamp or 2 or 3. One of the most important things that you're going to need for shipping packages is a scale. It totally depends on what you're sending and the weight of it, both of those things combined for the type of shipping that you're gonna need. This is also a good time to bring up the type of packing supplies you're gonna use. You might use a bubble mailer, you might use a flat envelope, like I mentioned, if you're doing stickers or postcards. You might use an actual box if you're making something a bit bigger. Packing can get a little bit tricky depending on what you're sending, but the most important thing is that it complies with shipping regulations so that it doesn't get sent back and your customer gets their package. Don't want them to not get their package. Step 5. Marketing. I know, it sucks. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying about where you're gonna decide to host your shop. For things like Etsy, sometimes you don't have to do as much marketing outside of Etsy. It totally depends on what you sell and how successful it becomes. But if you are like me and you have your own domain, your own website, you kind of have to do all that marketing yourself. If you are an Etsy user though, or you plan to be, it definitely can't hurt to do some marketing outside of it to maximize your sales as well. Now, there are a plethora of ways that you can market. You know what I'm gonna say. You know what I'm gonna say, don't you? Social media. I know. We're artists, we're not content creators, but we kind of have to be in this instance. I personally use mostly TikTok. I haven't used Instagram too much lately, but those are really great places to market. If you guys want, I will make an entire video on this because I could cover so much on this part. Marketing is definitely the hardest part of all and the most uncertain, because with all the other steps, like you can control everything, you've made the business, you have the idea, but then it's like, oh, I gotta get this out to people. It's hard. It's really hard. It's exhausting even. But I recommend that you don't give up. I recommend that you find all the ways that you can market and keep going. Some other ways you can market are obviously from your family or friends. You can do art markets where you set up a booth and sell your products in person so that people can know who you are and maybe visit your website. You can even put up flyers if you want. You can do media outreach, which is where you reach out to a brand, influencer, company that you want to work with, offer to send some of your products for free. They'll feature you and you'll get some exposure that way. But if you're just starting out, probably the least expensive way to market yourself is through social media. One tip that I will give if you are going to go through with social media is to be as genuine as possible. Don't come right out of the gate saying, please buy from me. Just try and show more about yourself, more about your business, your mission statement, your story, why you're doing what you do. And then people will naturally support you from that. One thing I've noticed is that people don't like to be sold to. They want to be given a reason why they should buy your products without outrightly saying it. Marketing is not immediate. The results do not come immediately. You have to be patient, even when you are burning out. Even when it is very difficult. This is the hardest part of the entire journey. If I have any advice to give you, focus on the process, focus on building a community rather than the end result. Separate yourself from the end result and be in the here and now, because this is the most beautiful part of it all. You're building something that you care about and sharing it with other people. That's what you should mostly be focusing on. So those are all of the tips I have. I hope it helped you. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments because I feel like there's probably a lot I didn't even cover. And if you want any other types of videos from me, I'm totally happy to make them. But otherwise, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you in the next video.